Howdy, welcome to the help video for quiz 1.08. So I think this is a fun quiz, and by fun I mean challenging. This is a more difficult quiz, so let's work through it together and make sure you understand. So this one says, what is the value of x? Alright, so we have an angle bisector here. So if you remember from the last help video, you can take this side and put those two pieces in a fraction, and that's going to be proportional, change colors here, to this side. So you can set these two pieces in a fraction. Alright, well, we don't know this green piece right away. So we have to think about that. If the whole distance is x and the yellow piece is 22, this piece would be x minus 22. It would be whatever's left over, x minus 22. So now we do have enough information to set up our proportions. So I'm going to go ahead and do top over bottom. So 22 over 77 equals top over bottom. X minus 22 over 87.5. Now remember, you can set up your fractions any way you want to as long as you get the corresponding parts together. And then from here we're going to cross multiply to solve it. Now remember, if we take 77 and we multiply it by x minus 22, we have to multiply it by both of those pieces. So this is one where we're going to have to distribute. So 77 times x is 77x, and then 77 times 22, or negative 22, sorry, is negative 1,694. And then we're also going to cross multiply this way. 22 times 87.5. Okay, and then we have an equation to solve. My goal is to get the x by itself, so I need to get rid of this negative 1,694. The opposite of subtracting is to add, so I'm going to add that to both sides. Bringing down that 77x, and then I'm going to add these two together. And then to finish getting x by itself, right now it's x times 77. The opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I'm going to divide each side by 77. And I got that x equals 47. Let me go back up and read the questions. It does say, what is the value of x? So that would be my final answer. All right. In this one, it also asks for what is the value of x. Okay, this is a side splitter problem, and typically in a side splitter, we do top over bottom equals top over bottom. Unfortunately, that's not really possible here. But that's fine because we can set up our fractions however we want to as long as we use the same thing in each fraction. So what I mean by that, over on this side, I'm given the whole length and the bottom piece. So I'm going to go ahead and label those. That's the whole, whoa, that's a weird W. The whole length, and this is just the bottom. And then I'm going to look over here. On this side, let me change colors for us. I'm given the whole length, and then I'm given the top. And since the top is x, I can't find the bottom. So I'm going to start off by setting up my fraction with the x. Wherever the x is, that's the one I'm going to use first. So it doesn't matter whether I do x over 81.9 or 81.9 over x. It does not matter. So I'm just going to do x over 81.9. But then I'm going to make myself a note. That was the top. Oops. X was the top, and the 81.9 was the whole length. So when I go to set up my second fraction, I need to make sure that I have the top over the whole length. All right, I know the whole length is 67.2, so I'm going to go ahead and put that where whole belongs. But I don't know the top piece yet. Notice here I don't have the top piece yet. But I do know the whole and the bottom, so I could take 67.2 and subtract off the bottom to figure out what the length of the top is. I don't know, I think this is a really fun problem. It's just a little challenging, but once you figure it out, once you can set it up, then it's not too hard from there. So again, let me just kind of go over what we did. We can set up our first fraction, the one with x, any way we want to. I just happen to use the top value over the whole thing. So my next fraction has to also be top over whole. So once I get it all set up, then we can solve it. We're going to cross multiply. 67.2 times x is 67.2x. And 81.9 times 35.2 is, let's see, 2,882.88. And then I'm trying to solve for x, so I'm going to divide each side by 67.2. That way that would cancel, x is by itself, and let me type that into my calculator. So I got x equals 42.9. And the question does say, what is the value of x? So we are good to go. That is our answer. Okay, so we want to solve for x again. This is an angle bisector here. We know that because those two angles are marked congruent. So if you think about splitting it up, we have top over bottom on this side, so 49 over 35. And if you want to make yourself a note, you did top over bottom. So you want to make sure that on the other side, you also do the top over the bottom. And then we'll go ahead and cross multiply and solve it. So you have to do 49 times x plus 1. You need to make sure you multiply that 49 times both of those pieces. So 49 times x and 49 times 1. And then when we cross multiply this way, that's just a calculator problem. 35 times 58.8 gives me 2,058. And now I'm solving an equation. I want to get that x by itself, so I subtract 49 from each side. Well, I don't know why I just wrote that so big. And then divide each side by 49. And I got that x equals 41. And then I check the question. It says, what is the value of x? So I know I'm done. And y'all, I check that question every time because sometimes you'll have to go and plug it back in. So just make sure you read the question carefully. All right. So again, what is the value of x? This one's a side splitter, and it's set up nice and neat. So we can just do top over bottom equals top over bottom. So 9 over 72 equals 3x minus 20 over 56. And then just like we've been doing with every other problem, we're going to cross multiply. Make sure that we multiply that 72 times each of those pieces. So I'm going to do 72 times 3x, which is 216x. And then I'm going to do 72 times negative 20, which is negative 1,440. And then I'm going to do the 9 times 56, which is 504. And then we're back to solving equations. Yay! So we want to get the x by itself, so I'm going to add 1,440 to each side. Bring that 216x straight down. Add those two pieces together. And then again, we need to divide by 216 to get the x by itself. So I got x equals 9, and it does say what is the value of x, so that would be my final answer. If it said, like, what is the value of length AB, you'd have to plug it back in. Okay, the last one. The area of a right triangle is 210 square inches. The height of the right triangle is 35 inches. What is the length of the hypotenuse of the right triangle? Whew, they are working you on this one, y'all. Okay, so this isn't similar triangles at all. We only have one right triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw it out. I have one right triangle. I know the height is 35. And my goal is to figure out the hypotenuse. So let me go ahead and, since we're given the area, let me write down the area formula. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. We know the area is 210, so I'm going to plug that in for the word area. We also know the height is 35, so I'm going to plug that in for h. And then I'm going to solve it to figure out the base. So, a couple different ways you can solve this. I'm just going to go ahead and multiply 1/2 times 35 together. You don't have to do it that way. Oops, but you can. So that would give me 210 equals 17.5 times the base. And since I want to solve for the base to get rid of 17.5, I would divide each side by 17.5. So the base is 12. Now, y'all, that doesn't even answer our question. All that beautiful work, and we still don't have the answer. The question doesn't say what is the base. The question says what is the length of the hypotenuse. So we still need to go back and figure out the hypotenuse. But good news, this is a right triangle, so we know we can use Pythagorean theorem. Anytime we know two side lengths, we can find the third using Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to plug our values in. 12 squared plus 35 squared equals c squared. And remember, it doesn't matter what order you plug in the 12 and the 35, as long as c is the hypotenuse. So let's go ahead and do some calculating. 12 squared is 144. 35 squared is 1,225. If I add those up, I get 1,369 equals c squared. And then to get rid of the square, you have to square root. Squares and square roots are opposites, so they would cancel. And so the square root of 1,369, that's a positive and a negative 37, but you can't have a side length that's a negative. So we know that our hypotenuse has to be positive 37. And that is our final answer. Whew, that was a doozy, y'all, but I hope when you get through this quiz, you feel really, really good about yourself because it was challenging, and I think challenging is awesome. All right, y'all, good luck.